The day my daughter-in-law told me I was no longer welcome in my own home, she was standing in my kitchen, drinking coffee from the mug my late wife had bought at a little shop in Vermont back in 1987. That detail shouldn't matter, but it does. It still does. My name is Richard. I'm 67 years old, retired, and for the last 3 years of my life, I watched my home, the home I spent 31 years paying off, slowly stop feeling like mine. Let me back up. My wife, Carol, passed away in the spring of 2019, pancreatic cancer. She was gone in 4 months from the day they told us. I won't spend too much time on that part because even now, sitting here trying to tell this story, it's the part that makes everything else feel small. She was my person. 42 years. And then she wasn't there anymore. My son Damien was 34 at the time. He and his wife, Lorraine, had been married for about 2 years. They lived in an apartment about 40 minutes from me, in the same suburb of Columbus, Ohio, where I'd raised him. After Carol passed, Damien started coming around more, helping with the yard, sitting with me on the back porch on Sundays. I was grateful. I won't pretend I wasn't struggling. About 6 months after Carol died, Damien brought up the idea of moving in. He said it made sense. The house was big, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a finished basement I hadn't set foot in since the funeral. He said he and Lorraine could help with the upkeep. I'd have company. He framed it as taking care of me, and I want to believe, that part of him meant it. What I didn't fully see at the time was how Lorraine felt about it. She smiled when they moved in. She helped Carol's sister carry boxes. She said all the right things. But there was something underneath it, something I couldn't name yet, a kind of watchfulness, like she was taking inventory. The first year was fine, mostly. We settled into routines. I cooked on Sundays. Damien handled the lawn. Lorraine decorated the guest room, which became their room, and slowly, quietly, her things began spreading through the house. A new couch in the living room, different curtains in the dining room. The photo of Carol and me at Niagara Falls, which had hung in the hallway for 20 years, moved to a shelf, then to a drawer. I found it there one afternoon and didn't say anything. I told myself it was just style differences. I told myself I was being sensitive. Maybe I was. But I don't think that's all it was. By the second year, Lorraine had started referring to the house as our home in conversations with her friends. I'd overhear it on the phone. We're having people over at our place. We finally redid the living room. I noticed it, filed it away, and kept quiet. I am, by nature, a patient man. Carol used to say I had the temperament of a golden retriever, slow to alarm, quick to forgive. I think she meant it affectionately. I'm no longer sure patience is always a virtue. The shift happened in the 3rd year. Lorraine got a new job, a good one, a management position at a marketing firm downtown. I was happy for her. But something changed in how she carried herself around the house. She came home tired and important, and I think the house started to feel like an extension of that importance. She wanted things a certain way, dinner at a certain time, quiet in the mornings, no guests without advance notice. These were not unreasonable requests on their own, but they were delivered not as requests but as facts, as if the rules of the house were hers to set, and Damien let her set them. That's the part that took me longest to accept. My son is not a cruel man, I want to be clear about that, but he is a man who avoids conflict the way some people avoid cold water. He'll walk all the way around it rather than step through. I watched him defer to Lorraine on things that were not hers to decide. Watched him go quiet when she spoke over me at the dinner table. Watched him look at the floor when she made a comment about the clutter in my study. My study, where I kept 30 years of woodworking books and Carol's old Reader's Digests, and a lamp she'd picked out at a garage sale in 2003. I still said nothing. I thought, they're young. This is a phase. Things will settle. They did not settle. The conversation that changed everything happened on a Thursday evening in October. I had come home from my weekly lunch with my friend Phil. We've been getting together every Thursday at the same diner since 2015. It's one of my favorite things in my life. And when I walked in the back door, Damien and Lorraine were already at the kitchen table. They had that particular stillness. That means 2 people have been talking and are now waiting. Lorraine spoke first. She always does. She said they'd been thinking a lot about the future. She said the house was beautiful, but that at a certain point, it made more sense for Damien and her to have the space to themselves. To start their own chapter. She used that phrase, their own chapter, as if I were a previous edition. She said they had looked into some wonderful senior living communities nearby. Very nice places. She had brochures. She actually pulled out a folder. I looked at my son. He was looking at the table. I said, "Damien, are you asking me to leave my house?" He looked up then. He said, "Dad, it's just, we think it would be better for everyone. You'd have people your own age around. Activities. You wouldn't be alone when we travel. I want to tell you," I said something strong and clear in that moment. I didn't. I sat there for a long time. I think I nodded slowly, the way you do when you're hearing something and your brain refuses to process it as real. Then I said, "Let me think about it." Lorraine smiled like the meeting had gone well. I went upstairs to my bedroom, to what had been our bedroom, Carol's and mine, for over 2 decades, and I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the wall, and for the first time since Carol died, I didn't feel sad. I felt something cooler than sadness, something that had more edges to it. I thought about the house. I thought about the deed. I thought about the fact that my name, just my name, was on it. Always had been. Carol and I had owned it together, but when she passed, it transferred to me alone. No will complications. No joint tenants. Just me, Richard Eugene Calloway, sole owner. I thought about what Lorraine had said, their own chapter, and I thought, all right then. I did not sleep much that night, but I was not panicking. I was planning. The next morning, I called my attorney. His name is Stuart, and I've trusted him for 20-some years. He handled Carol's estate, helped me with some contractor disputes back in the day, solid man. I told him what had happened. I told him what I was thinking. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Richard, are you sure?" I said I was. He said, "Give me a week." I gave him a week. In the meantime, I kept things completely normal. I came down for breakfast. I asked Lorraine about her job. I watched football with Damien on Sunday. I acted like a man who was thinking things over, because as far as they knew, that's all I was doing. What I was actually doing, in the hours they were both at work, was methodical and careful. I went through the house room by room and identified what was mine. My woodworking tools in the garage, Carol's jewelry in the lockbox in the closet, the small framed photos, the things that had been in this house before either of them arrived, my financial documents, my personal papers. I took note of all of it. I also called my realtor. Her name is Gwen. She'd helped me do some research on refinancing a few years back. Very sharp woman. I told her I was considering selling. I told her I needed a quick but clean process. She said she could have a market assessment to me by the end of the week. Gwen called back on Friday. The number she gave me made me sit down in my kitchen chair and breathe for a moment. The neighborhood had appreciated significantly since we'd bought. The house, my house, was worth over $400,000. Probably closer to $430,000 in the current market, she said, if we priced it right. I thanked her and told her I'd be in touch. Stuart called the following Monday with an answer I already suspected but needed confirmed. The house was entirely mine. There was no legal requirement for me to give Damien or Lorraine any notice before listing it, beyond what was standard in the state. As the owner, I could sell it on my own timeline. He also walked me through some other things, updating my will, restructuring my accounts, that I won't go into in full detail, but which I took care of over the next 2 weeks with quiet and deliberate attention. During all of this, Damien mentioned the senior living brochures again twice, once at dinner, once on a Saturday morning. Both times I said I was still thinking. Both times Lorraine watched me with that watchful look of hers. I smiled. I passed the butter. The listing went live on a Wednesday. Gwen had advised me to price it at $420,000, and within 4 days we had 3 offers. I accepted the strongest one. A young family from Indianapolis, relocating for work, pre-approved, no contingencies except inspection, which went smoothly. The closing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. I want to pause here and tell you something that might surprise you. In the weeks between listing and closing, I felt almost no anger. That's the honest truth. What I felt was mostly clarity, a kind of stillness that I recognized. It was the same feeling I used to get in my workshop when a project finally came together the way I'd planned it in my head. Everything moving the way it was supposed to move. I did not tell Damien or Lorraine the house was listed. I did not tell them there were offers. I did not tell them there was a closing date. I know how that sounds. I've turned it over many times. But here is what I keep coming back to. They had made a plan for my future without consulting me. They had decided, between themselves, what was going to happen in my home, and they had presented it to me as if my opinion were a courtesy rather than a necessity. I did not yell at them. I did not threaten them. I did the only thing that was actually mine to do. 3 days before closing, I found an apartment. The building is about 2 miles from the house, newer construction, 2 bedrooms, second floor with a decent view of a small park. I gave them a deposit and signed a 12-month lease. 2 days before closing, while Damien was at work and Lorraine was in a morning meeting downtown, a moving crew I had hired came to the house and loaded everything that was mine. My furniture from the bedroom, my tools from the garage, my books, Carol's things that I had saved, her rocking chair, her quilts, the photo albums, the Vermont mug, all of it. It took about 4 hours. The crew was professional and careful. I tipped them well and thanked them by name. When they were done, I walked through the house one last time. I stood in the kitchen, where Carol had made coffee every single morning for years, where she'd stood at the window, watching the backyard birds she loved. I stood in the hallway where the kids' height marks were still penciled on the doorframe. Damien's and his younger sister Ren's, who lives in Portland now, and for what it's worth, had been furious on my behalf from the moment I told her what was happening. I stood in the living room, which now had Lorraine's furniture and Lorraine's curtains and almost none of the traces of my family left in it. Said goodbye to the house quietly. Not to them, to the house. Then I locked the door, put the key on the counter, and left. I was at my new apartment, getting the bed frame assembled, when my phone started ringing. Damien called first. I let it go to voicemail. Then Lorraine. Then Damien again, this time with a text that said, "Dad, where are you? We came home and all your stuff is gone. What's going on?" I sent back a text that said, "I've moved out. I'll explain everything soon. I'm safe." He called 4 more times. I finally picked up on the 5th call that evening. His voice had that particular quality, somewhere between confused and frightened, that I remembered from when he was about 9 years old and had broken a window ball in the backyard. Not defiant. Genuinely unsure of what was happening, he said, "Dad, what did you do? Where is all your stuff? Where are you?" I told him I had found an apartment. I told him it was nice and I was settling in. He said, But what about the house?" I told him I had sold it. There was a silence on the line that I won't try to describe, because I'm not sure I have the right words for it. Then he said, "You sold it?" I said yes. I told him the closing was the day after tomorrow. I told him the buyers were a family from Indianapolis, a husband and wife and their 2 daughters, which I thought was a nice thing, a family filling those rooms again. I told him the new owners would need possession within 30 days of closing, which meant he and Lorraine would need to make arrangements. He said, "Dad, you can't, you didn't even tell us." I said, "Damien, you didn't tell me either. When you and Lorraine decided I needed to leave, did you ask me first?" He didn't answer that. I said, "I want you to know that I'm not doing this out of anger. I've had a long time to think about it. This is my house. It has been my house since before you were born. And you're my son, and I love you, and I hope that someday, when some of the dust settles, you'll understand why I made the choices I made." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Where are you going to go?" I said, "I already went. I have an apartment. It's small, and it's quiet, and it's mine." Lorraine must have been in the room because I heard her say something in the background, sharp and fast. I didn't catch the words. It didn't matter. After I hung up, I sat in my new living room. The lamp from the garage was in the corner. Carol's rocking chair was by the window. The Vermont mug was in the kitchen cabinet. The photo of us at Niagara Falls was leaning against the wall, waiting for me to find the right nail. I'm not going to tell you things resolved themselves cleanly, because they didn't. Not right away. Damien and Lorraine found a rental apartment quickly. They both had good jobs, they were fine. Whatever their panic in that first week had looked like, they landed on their feet. Damien and I went about 2 months without real conversation. That was hard. That part was genuinely hard, and I won't dress it up otherwise. My daughter Ren flew in from Portland about 3 weeks after the closing. She took me to dinner and held my hand across the table and told me she was proud of me. and that she wished Mom could have seen it. I cried a little at that. I'm not embarrassed to say so. Slowly, over the following months, Damien and I began talking again. Carefully at first, short calls, then longer ones. We had dinner together in the spring. Just the two of us. Lorraine did not come, which I think was her own choice and which I respected. He told me he'd done a lot of thinking. He said he was sorry for not speaking up more. I believed him. I know the difference between someone who is sorry and someone who is just saying it. We're still finding our way back to each other. These things take time. I'm patient enough for that. As for me, I've had the apartment for almost a year now. I've set up the workshop corner in the second bedroom. I finished a rocking chair from scratch in January, walnut with a curved back. Took me 6 weeks, and I'm prouder of it than almost anything I've made. Phil and I still meet at the diner every Thursday. I've started sleeping through the night again, which I hadn't done in longer than I realized. Some mornings, I sit with my coffee at the window that looks out over the small park, and I think about the house. Not with sadness, mostly. More with something like gratitude. For all the years it held us, for the family it contained, for Carol standing at the kitchen window watching the birds. The Vermont mug is on my counter every morning. That still matters to me. I suppose it always will. If you're sitting somewhere right now and someone has made you feel like a guest in your own life, like your home, your time, your future is theirs to arrange. I want you to hear this. It is not too late to act. You do not have to raise your voice. You do not have to ask for permission. You do not have to accept the version of your future that someone else drafted for you. Patience is a virtue. But knowing when your patience has been mistaken for surrender, that might be the more important lesson. I'm 67 years old. I wake up in my own home, on my own terms, every single day. That's enough. That is more than enough.